we're hoping to get as a starter. So thank you very much indeed. So hopefully people can hear me, and welcome everybody to the February OREF meeting. We're going to, in a minute, hear from Ross from Warmworks. But before that, I'm going to ask Luke to do a little bit of an introduction and set a little bit of context for us about Warmworks, because as I understand it, the contract is organised through Orkney Council, and it'll be useful to set the context in that. After that, we are going to be able to we've got a bit of time to catch up with other bits and pieces of news that are going on around Orkney as a whole, and so a number of people are able to speak. Michael Crombie from Home Energy Scotland is here. Mark from Community Energy Scotland, and also Robert has just had his arm twisted to say he'll say something, and Evelyn could also fill in some details on what's going on with Co-Wheels and the car club. Gareth is here, and can no doubt fill in all the cracks that are left between all the rest of us, and no pressure, Gareth. And I've got a few bits and pieces about what's been going on in EMEC and some OREF stuff as well. So as always, we're going to throw the floor open for about half an hour or so, we're expecting some time for questions and bits and pieces, and then we'll just see where we get to. So just to point out, we're recording the session because it's useful for those people who can't get along to it tonight, and we've been asked to record these generally for other people's use later on. So without any further ado, I'll start dribbling on. And Luke, do you want to just introduce Ross and Warmworks as a starter? I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Luke.
Working any better? Oh, come on.
Getting there. The mic's a bit low. Bring the mic up.
Is that any better? Just try and play with
it.
There we go. Does that
Getting
help?
there.
There we go.
Yeah.
It's working. All right. So I'm going to look like an air traffic controller for the evening, but apologies for lateness. We men needed to get to bed. So yeah, Luke Fraser. I work for the housing service at the council. We've been running our heap SABs, which is our home energy efficiency program for Scotland area-based schemes for the last 5 or so years. Firefly Energy have been doing that job for us. So just want to give a little bit of background on what we have been doing, and then obviously we've now got a new contract, and Ross and Warmworks are involved in that. They won the contract for that, and they bring a lot of experience, a lot of additional different bits and pieces, and Ross will be going in and covering that as well. But just a little bit of background on what we've done over the last 5 years and what we hope to build on for the next 5 years with the contract with Warmworks. So heap SABs, we get about £1 million a year from the Scottish Government. It's largely energy efficiency around insulation. So that's loft top-ups, that's underfloor insulation, and that's things like internal wall and external wall insulation as well. We have dipped our toe in the water a little bit with high heat retention storage heaters. The Scottish Government opened that a couple of years ago. Quite strict criteria on it. So we did some, but not as many as we'd like. We've been able to do it more again this coming year, this new contract. So that will give us a real opportunity to push that on. And we're hopeful we'll be able to get heat pumps and various bits and pieces coming forward. And Ross will kind of go into more of what Warmworks do with some of their other projects as well. But over the last 5 years, we've spent about £5 million of heap SABs and Warm Homes funding. So £5-6 million worth of funding's been spent. And what was it total? We've got figures here. It's about £8.2 million worth of actual works. So households can put in contributions as well. Things like external wall insulation can be quite expensive, so we can provide £9,000 of funding from area-based schemes. There's also energy company obligation funding that has come in, and we also work with an organisation called Warm Zones, who helped us with some additional kind of top-up funding. So we got between 300 and 500,000 from them. So a lot of money's been invested in Orkney, and it's actually been all across the island. It's not just been mainland. So in terms of measures, we've done over 1,000 measures in probably around about 700 households. And of those 1,000 measures, about 745 were on mainland Orkney. So we've well over 250 measures in some of the other islands. Sandy in particular got over 100 measures and over £1 million of funding spent. So there's quite a lot of money being pushed to different parts of the island. And it's been a really successful program. So just a bit of background on where we are, what we've done, and what we're hoping to do going forward. We want to work alongside various partners are here. We're tying in quite close with Reflex. I'm involved in that project, and it's very much saying to households that are eligible for stuff, for things like heat sabs and also Warmer Home Scotland, which I'm sure Ross will touch on, that we can offer you insulation, we can potentially offer you heating, we can offer you advice and assistance through the likes of Thaw and Home Energy Scotland, and we can then potentially offer things like battery technology and various other bits and pieces as well. So we really want to have a whole house approach, which is I want to send, if we're sending out workmen to one of the aisles, to a house in one of the aisles, we want to send them once. We want to do everything we can possibly do to that house at one time to bring it up to a really, really good standard, so that household gets access to all the funding they can get access to at any one point. So that very much involves us needing the likes of Warmworks, the likes of Thaw and Home Energy Scotland, and that involved in that as well. So I'll shut up and pass you over to the main event, Mr. Armstrong.
Ross, you have the floor.
Good stuff. I mean, that's quite pressure from Luke being billed as the main event. I'll have to sharpen up my act in impromptu basis as we go through. So yeah, thanks Luke for the introduction, and very helpful that Luke has obviously set the scene in terms of what the council does and the council's kind of approach over the last few years. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put some slides up in a moment. My first thing is, I'm a great believer that there is such a condition as death by PowerPoint. I think that does exist, and it is a real risk that we all face in these online events. So when I put my slides up, please don't think I'm going to drone on for 45 minutes and just read what's on the slides. That's not my intention at all. The slides are really just to frame what I'm going to say.
OREF.
So the slides are really just going to frame what I'm going to say and then give a bit of a background and structure to the session. Really, if there are any questions as I'm going, don't feel like you've got to wait till the end. I'm not someone who kind of takes these things personally. If you jump in and interrupt and ask a question and say, but what are you talking about? Hopefully I'll know what I'm talking about and I'll be able to answer the questions as we go. So I will try, without further ado, to pop the slides on screen. So hopefully,
yep, we're seeing them.
Everyone see them, yeah? So nods, I can see Luke and Neil nodding, that will do. So yeah, as I say, what I'm going to try and do is first of all give an introduction to Warmworks. Some of you might have heard of Warmworks, some of you won't. So I'll talk a bit about where Warmworks has come from, what we're about and how we do things. I'll build on what Luke's already outlined in terms of an outline of heap sabs and how it works and what people can get and how that process goes. Given the forum, I thought what I would do is then bridge in to talk a bit about our experience with emerging technologies and renewable technologies in our sector. And when I say our sector, I mean, you know, Warmworks is primarily engaged in households that are in or at risk of fuel poverty. And I think for a long time, there's been this kind of tension between our renewable technologies and new technologies about pure climate change and dark green policies, or are they about social justice and fuel poverty and making things better for people that need help? So I'm going to try and talk a little bit about that, why I think those things can and do work together. And then I'll finish off with a sales pitch of please help us raise awareness about the programme and roll up. We want to get people into the programme. As I've said, questions, comments, thoughts, hand grenades, whatever you've got, feel free to throw them in as I'm going. There's the chat function, which I think I'll be able to see. So if you want to put something in the chat, or if you want to just shout over the top of me, I promise whatever's easier, I will work with it. So that's the plan. We'll see how we go in terms of sticking to the approach. Brief introduction to Warmworks. All of this is available on our website, and there are lots of bits of information about the company and the work that we do, but I'll give you the kind of 2-second version. Warmworks was founded in 2015, and I joined Warmworks as its first employee, believe it or not, in April 2015. And I famously said, well, I think what I'll do is help to set this business up and then probably move on to something else. And that was 6 years ago. So it's obviously been a journey that's kept everyone interested and captivated along the way. Warmworks was specifically set up as a joint venture between the Energy Saving Trust, Changeworks, and Everwarm, who operate in the sort of fuel poverty energy efficiency space. And it was specifically set up to bid for and then run Warmer Home Scotland. So Luke's talked about Warmer Home Scotland, mentioned it earlier. That's a programme of up to £224 million over 7 years from the Scottish Government. Grant-based programme designed to reduce bills and promote affordable warmth by installing energy-saving measures in the homes of qualifying customers. And our role is to take the customer from the very first point where they're referred into the scheme for help, all the way through to a survey, a recommendation of what needs to be done, arranging works through our registered subcontractors, and then a final quality inspection on all of the work that we complete. The scheme is intended to provide a genuinely national service. Those are really easy words to say. They're difficult things to achieve. Because the scheme is set up as a first come, first serve reactive service, then we go wherever the need arises. So typically Warmer Home Scotland might get 20 to 30, maybe 40 at the moment, referrals per day. I never know where those referrals are coming from. Of the 40 referrals we get tomorrow, 10 of them could be in Stranraer, 10 of them could be in Stornoway, 10 could be in Sandy, and 10 could be in Dundee. We literally have no idea where the referrals are coming from on a day-to-day basis. But the way that the scheme's set up is it has to respond wherever need arises. And that means we have to have a national service that works at a local level. People who are based in Highland and Island communities, in particular, feel that the local service is important, that the local service is a key part of them trusting the scheme and what the scheme provides. So you can see on the slide there, we have a supply chain of 22 installers, all registered, all meeting our quality marks and passing our compliance checks, and 7 of the 22 are based in island communities. The 2 installers we have based in Orkney, RS Merriman and our Bob Clouston, have been with us since 2015. They've been with us since the very start, so we've been working with them across Orkney for the national scheme for 6 years. We also have local surveyors for Warmer Home Scotland and local inspection resource, which we're working into our delivery of the area-based scheme as well. I'll come on to that later on. As Warmworks has got, I guess, more established with running the national scheme, we're now taking on other contracts. One of the contracts we bid for, and as Luke's described, we're lucky enough to come through a tender process, was the Heaps Abs contract just under a year ago. The contract will run for up to 5 years. And as Luke said, the funding is set by the Scottish Government on an annual basis, but this year's running at about £1.5 million. The way that the area-based schemes work with the national scheme is, if you think of the national scheme as a first-come, first-served reactive service, and the area-based scheme is more of a proactive service, where area-based schemes can target specific streets, communities, islands, in the case of Orkney. So you have a proactive and a reactive service that can work hand in hand together. Obviously, the circumstances of the last 12 months have made it slightly difficult for that to work in its normal way in terms of getting access to places. But certainly our ambition as we get into the later years of the ABS contract is to be going island by island with that whole house approach that Luke described. So that's Warmworks. It's a bit longer than 2 minutes, but that's the introduction, and that's the kind of brief as to where we've come from and where we are now. Track record. So this is a bit of an advertorial, but forgive me because I have to kind of reassure you that we know what we're doing. We've been around for a long time. We've now supported over 20,000 households, more than 200 of those from across Orkney. So we've been to the vast majority of the Isles in helping 200 households. As I mentioned before, supported by local surveyors and 2 very well-established local installers. We have got very high standards. 100% of the work we do on Warmer Home Scotland has an independent quality inspection. And at the moment, past there, you can see 98% of them pass that independent inspection at the first time of asking. So we set the standards very high, we set the bar very high. We only work with installers that can meet our standards and are prepared to do things the way we believe they should be done. On the outside of just the business of insulating homes and fitting heat pumps and fitting boilers, we also have an impact on the wider community. So you can see there the scheme's made 132 apprenticeships possible, and all of our subcontractors are contractually obliged to pay the living wage and meet the highest standards that we set. So we understand that delivering a programme like Warm Home Scotland and like HeapSabs, because these are two parts of the same service, means high standards, it means getting things right first time, and it means the customers that we look after should be able to trust and buy into what we provide. So I'm not going to kind of go into too much Janet and John on this. Home energy efficiency programs for Scotland based schemes, you can see why we call it HeapSabs all the time. They've been going for the last 5 or 6 years pretty successfully, as I mentioned before, as the proactive, planned, target each community within an area approach to sit alongside the national scheme, which is on a reactive basis. And the Scottish Government sets 4 objectives for area-based schemes: reducing fuel poverty, reducing carbon emissions, levering in energy company obligation funding, and supporting the local economy and sustainable local economic development. They're the 4 key strategic aims. And when we sit down with the council and try to plan how we're going to be taking the scheme forward, these are always the things we're asked to report back on. So the funding has to be ticking those boxes. Good. So, I mean, just to finish off, we do recognise, Luke talked about Firefly that have come before us, and the app scheme's been going for 5 or 6 years, spent, you know, millions of pounds, already been in and made lots of positive improvements across Orkney. So we haven't come in to kind of say, oh, well, let's get a blank sheet of paper and start again. We've come in to say, let's build on the successes that are already there. Luke and his team and the council have got a lot of existing knowledge, and several important stakeholders locally who know and understand how people can come to the area-based scheme. We're not going to start reinventing the wheel. So some of the people on the call tonight, Michael, Robert, others are leading organisations and working with organisations that we want to work with. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. We're going to kind of see what works and build on that. So again, Luke's covered some of this. We're appointed as managing agent, which means we manage the end-to-end customer journey. So I should have said at the start, sorry, forgive me. On the call tonight is one of my colleagues, Michelle Costa, who you can't see because I don't think her camera's on, but I should have really introduced Michelle at the start. So Michelle joined Warmworks in June, and Michelle is running our Kirkwall office. So if you kind of drop in to come and see us, we're based just by the library, just up the road from the library. You can come and see Michelle. She'll come and she'll have tea on. You can talk to Michelle about the scheme and how the scheme works. So Michelle heads up what we're doing in the office at the moment. And the role that we have is to take applications, process applications, check eligibility, check that people qualify, and then essentially hold the hand of every customer from the beginning through to the end. So from that initial conversation with Michelle, or whoever in our team, through to an assessment of does this person genuinely qualify, and the council getting involved to sign off an offer of grant, through to appointing a subcontractor to have the works done, and then inspecting the quality of the work. And I've got a graphic that explains it slightly better than that word salad I've just kind of given you, so we'll get onto the graphic in a moment, which will set it out. Luke's talked about the allocation for this year, 1.5 million. And I've just mentioned in the last slide, we can't do this on our own. We need people locally who know the communities we want to work in and work with, and we want to reach those most in need, and we can't do that on our own. So, delivery team, slightly late, but nonetheless, our office team, Michelle, and also she's supported by one of the senior technical managers that we have in Warmworks, Robert Patterson, who's been coming over to help support Michelle set the business up and set the office up and mobilise the contract. So Robbie's led the mobilisation exercise, and Michelle continues to lead the kind of customer-facing, friendly face of Warmworks. And she hasn't got a camera on, but I promise Michelle has got a very friendly face, so I'm not mis-selling there. She'll be more than happy to kind of talk to anybody that comes in. We're also in the process of recruiting an additional member of staff that'll be based full-time with Michelle in the Kirkwall office. So between Michelle, our new member of staff in Kirkwall, and Robbie's kind of technical support and contractor-based support on an as and when basis, we've got a team that's building up. We've also got support from our head office in Edinburgh, although it's not in Edinburgh at the moment. It's located in Edinburgh in a virtual sense, but not physical sense, because our Edinburgh office is closed for obvious reasons. But if, for some reason, Michelle gets, 40, 50 calls all on the same day, she's got a queue around the block, we have got a fully active customer service team in Edinburgh that can dial in and support when needed. And Billy Gramboard is our survey lead, but also Warmworks has internal surveyors that are fully qualified and experienced in carrying out assessments for work. And I mentioned the installers earlier on. Just to say on the installers before I move on that, although we have Clouston's and Merriman's signed up, and we have very good relationships with Bob and Tony and the teams that they run, I wouldn't want anybody to think that the installation companies that we use is a closed shop. So we're already talking to some local installers, smaller companies, who may be showing an interest in getting involved in the installation of insulation and things like that. And if they can meet our standards and work with us and do what we need them to do, we're always on the lookout for smaller local companies to help when things get busy and maybe pick up some more work. So Clouston's and Merriman's are with us at the moment because they've been with us for a long time, but definitely not a closed shop. So I promised you a lovely graphic after all that text, and here is the lovely graphic. This is on our website. This just explains how it works from start to finish if someone applies to the area-based scheme. So the first box there, on the second box, you can see that someone might be in to see Thor, someone might be in an event where Michael's presenting from Home Energy Scotland, or Michael might be, out and about talking to people and existing networks. What we would then have would be a referral into us, or somebody might walk in off the street and say, oh, I've heard about this insulation, how do I get it? And that customer engagement can come from a number of forms. I don't really mind where it comes from. Our job is to find people that need our help and get them in the system. So I'm not precious about whether that comes from Hez, from Thor, from Citizens Advice, or they just hear a piece on the radio, they hear Luke's dulcet tones on the radio and decide they've got to get down to our office immediately and apply. I honestly don't mind the route it comes in. Our job is to help people that need our help, and it can come from many different sources. I think in future years of the contract, as we become more established and we get out of the COVID-based world, that customer engagement will be more targeted on an island-by-island basis. So the point that Luke made earlier, we'll target specific islands and try and treat that island once and for all with packages of work that will upgrade their homes and tackle fuel poverty. You can see there once they apply, there's an in-home survey which Billy will carry out, or one of our others in the team. An offer's made to the customer via the council once they've approved it, in box 5 there. And the work's done by one of our registered contractors. Any aftercare, support, advice and customer feedback we would do after the work was complete. Eligibility criteria, these are all on our website. I think, Luke, there might be on the council's website as well. Yeah, Luke's not in on the council's website. And also Michelle is in the process of developing some lovely glossy leaflets and handouts that set out all of these eligibility criteria. So I'm not going to go through them line by line, but it is about council tax band, ownership, and the calculation that someone's in or at risk of fuel poverty. So someone has to be in or at risk of fuel poverty, in the right council tax band, and have the right tenure. And this is not a scheme that is available to social housing. So it's all about those 3 categories, really. As I say, I'm not going to go through line by line. It's all available on our website or on the council's website as you need. The point of the eligibility criteria is to make sure that the money reaches people that need it most, people in the circumstances where they're paying more than they can afford to stay warm in their home, and obviously meet the council tax banding as well. So the eligibility criteria help to target the assistance. Here are the measures, or the different interventions, if you like, that we can make on heat slabs. Loft insulation, which could be a top up to existing insulation, or it could be there's just nothing in the loft whatsoever. That's what we mean by, say, virgin loft. So whatever level of loft insulation is needed to bring the house up to the required standard, we can obviously provide. Underfloor insulation is another available intervention that we can do on the scheme. Solid wall insulation internally, and so there's a range of technologies that can be applied to do internal wall insulation, and external wall insulation, which tends to be the more popular option. It's quite extensive work, extensive with the T, that is, and extensive work that can really make an aesthetic upgrade to a property as well as an energy efficiency upgrade, but can lead to some very, very chunky energy bill savings, because if people are in solid wall insulations with not a scrap of insulation in the walls, external wall insulation can make a big impact. And as Luke mentioned, high heat retention electric storage heaters are available on the scheme this year too. So we know there's a lot of storage heating in Orkney in terms of people's heating choice. Some of it's very old, some of it's very inefficient, some of it's just outright clapped out and ready for the scrap heap. Our job is to say, well, high heat retention storage heaters, modern, brand new, high spec, high heat retention storage heaters can make a big difference to A, the comfort level and the warmth in somebody's house, because they retain the heat for longer and release the heat more slowly, but B, the energy bill savings, because they don't need it to take as much electricity in. We are continuing to work with the council for other opportunities to expand the range of measures. Luke's talked about heat pumps. That's something that's obviously under kind of active consideration, and nothing really to say on that at the moment, but I guess stay tuned would be my counsel there. So, given the audience, I thought what I would do is not just talk about the fabric measures that Warmworks offers experience of, but also I'd talk a little bit about our experience with renewable technologies. So over the last 18 months, particularly on Warmer Homes Scotland, but also in other programs that we run, the proportion of renewable technologies in the mix of what we fit has grown substantially. If I wind the clock back 3 or 4 years ago in Warmer Homes Scotland, we probably would have fitted about 50 heat pumps in the whole course of a 12-month scheme year. This year, I think Warmworks, in the 12 months to the end of March, even allowing for COVID and restrictions and all the things we've had to work with over the 12-month period, will do over 500 heat pumps across the contracts that we run. And almost all of that, there's probably a very small handful of ground source heat pumps. Almost all of that, 98% of that, will be air source heat pumps. And we typically work with 2 air source heat pump products. One is the Mitsubishi EcoDan, and the other is the Valent EcoTherm product. Both of those products are classed as ultra low noise, so there's no planning constraints about noise. And all of those products that I mentioned are able to withstand coastal erosion and meet the spec for being installed in coastal and island communities. They're very, very good products, and they're very well received by our customers. What I would say, and lots of you on the call will understand what I'm getting at here, is a heat pump is only useful if the fabric of the building is adequately insulated. A heat pump by itself is not a panacea, it's not a silver bullet, but a heat pump in a package of assistance that involves the fabric being upgraded by things like heat sabs, and then the heat pump being installed alongside that, that's where heat pumps will start to make a difference. Heat pump technology is moving on all the time. I talked about the EcoDan and the Aerotherm systems that we're putting in. 3 years ago, these products weren't really on the market. This is the next iteration of the heat pump technology. They're more efficient, they're quieter, as I say, and they take up less space. So very, very popular. One of the contracts that we're in at the moment that's focusing solely on heat pumps is a project for the UK government, BAYS, where we're fitting 250 heat pumps across the central belt of Scotland, primarily in on-gas areas. So BAYS realises that if everyone in the UK is going to be having low carbon heating and moving to heat pumps, the big challenge will be persuading people who've had mains gas to switch to a heat pump. So the project is intended to test how willing are people to sacrifice their cheap well understood, nice and easy gas boiler for an air source heat pump. So that's an interesting project that we're running at the moment, and just keeping an eye on what that's telling us. We're also due to complete the project by the end of March to install 130 domestic batteries, Tesla batteries, across Dumfries and Galloway. So Mark Hamilton from Solo sits on the project board for this project. Solo partnered with us from the start in terms of technical advice and input on what we can do with the batteries once they're installed. And for a number of customers, they're seeing big savings in their energy bill purely from the battery. So without solar, without a generation capacity, and without a heat pump, purely from the battery and the heating system they have in place, they can save money just using the battery. So that's an interesting conclusion that we're starting to find in terms of end users. The opportunity for us is in terms of households in fuel poverty and renewable technologies. If we are going to transition to a zero carbon future, and we are, then the phrase just transition comes up time and time again. And we have to, in this process of transitioning to a zero carbon Scotland, a zero carbon United Kingdom, get to the point where we understand there is a whole cohort of society that won't get there by themselves. They need support, they need advice, they need grant funding to support the capital cost of the transition. There is an opportunity there because you can fit batteries, fit heat pumps, and fit generation in fuel poor homes and save them a lot of money. But it's not necessarily as easy as, you know, people who might have some capital behind them and want to go and invest in X, Y, and Z fancy technology. We can't achieve the transition and leave one community behind. The challenge is exactly that, not treating fuel poor households as guinea pigs and getting the right package of aftercare and support in place. So I know Michael's on the call representing Home Energy Scotland. That whole concept about how fuel poor customers get the right aftercare, advice, support. It's all very well fitting a brand new shiny heat pump and a battery in a fuel poor home, but unless the right package of aftercare and advice is there, they won't get the optimal use from the technology, and therefore they won't get the optimal savings in terms of lower fuel bills and generating the benefits of a positive switch to a low carbon heating system. So there's an opportunity to bring fuel poor households with us in the renewable technology transition, but the challenge needs to be borne in mind alongside it. And another piece, just to kind of, we're coming towards the end now for people who are starting to look up the symptoms of death by PowerPoint. Don't worry, we are coming towards the end. And community benefits is an integral part of what we do. I talked earlier in the presentation about 132 apprenticeships created. We want to roll that on into this contract in Orkney. So we've developed a specific community strategy for Orkney that we've shared with the council. It will be about creating jobs, apprenticeships, work placements and training and development. It will be about working with local groups with good fundraising activity to make sure that we can kind of target any fundraising and charitable support that we do in the most meaningful way. And it'll also be about trying to find discretionary funds. Luke and the council like nothing better than when we can get somebody else's money to help support the scheme. So we will find some discretionary funds to try and see if we can support some of our most vulnerable customers. These are all words, right? So everybody's seen words like these on slides before from people like me who go, we care about communities and we're committed to communities. What I would say is don't judge me by these words, judge me by our deeds over the next couple of years. We've made a massive impact into local communities in Scotland and we want to build on that in what we do in Orkney. Some bits around communications, these are social media snapshots. We have done PR press work with the council's press team. We've worked with Home Energy Scotland around some of their awareness raising work. I've even been on Radio Orkney. I made my debut on Radio Orkney a couple of weeks ago. And I'm sure that's something that's holding a special place in the hearts of everyone that listened to it. But we need to be ramping that up over the next few months, and we need to make sure that we get the message out there to the people that need it. Second last slide, just to say this is where we're at now. So COVID has not made the first 9 months of the contract an easy experience for any of us. I would have liked to have been on the island a lot more. I've only been up to the Isles sort of half a dozen times since we were appointed. I would have liked to have been up a lot more, but hopefully, he says, touching wood and crossing fingers and toes and whatever else, you know, we are getting to the point where travel and being physically there will be a bit easier over the next couple of months. But we have had more than 100 referrals, so lots of referrals from partners. People on the call tonight have given us some referrals. Keep it up. Yeah. We need to keep going. We need to keep that momentum going and push the snowball down the hill. And we've done our first installation. So we've done the grand total of 4 completed installations, but mighty oak trees only grow from small acorns. So yeah, 4 installations is okay. I'd have liked to have been a bit further on, but we can't do anything about the old pandemic. So we're just really getting the pipeline full now and moving into next year with some momentum. Last slide. Look, Warmworks has been serious about its commitment to Orkney since we started the national scheme 5 or 6 years ago. We're here for the long term. We've been on the Isles, working on the Isles with good established people, and we feel like we've got a good starting position, but we want to be here for a long time. We want to be a long-term partner of the council and a long-term partner of the Scottish Government. The challenge of persuading people to upgrade the fabric of their properties and make the transition to renewables is not a 2-year challenge, it's a 20-year challenge, and we want to be part of that solution. So that's our commitment, really, to build a broad coalition of stakeholders to provide support and reach those most in need. And I am now definitely going to stop talking and happy to take any questions that anyone might have.
Ross, thanks very much indeed for that. So building a broad coalition, you're in the right place. So with the right people. So you're really good to hear from you. And thanks very much indeed for that. That was very interesting. The plan is we've got a couple of other people who can speak as well, and basically it was an idea to get some other pieces together. And I'm wondering whether if people have got any burning questions, we can put those to Ross now. If, on the other hand, you want to wait, Michael's got some stuff to talk about, Home Energy Scotland, and Robert may well have something to add in from Thor. We may be able to take them all together and have a bit of a discussion around the whole piece. I know Gareth has probably got some points on reflex as well. So if I see anybody stick their hand up or turn the camera on or wave or frantically do something that I can determine, we'll take comments. Evelyn, go.
Yeah, it might actually lead on to one of the talks, but I was just wondering what happens if you just miss out on being eligible for the support from HEAP-SABs or from Warmworks more generally?
So there's lots of other routes. I don't think it ever kind of, I would never say the door's closed. If someone comes to us and says, do I qualify for the national scheme? And they don't qualify for the national scheme, they don't qualify for HEAP-SABs, then that's where Michael and the Home Energy Scotland team would kick in again, because there are interest-free loans that the Scottish Government makes available. There's all sorts of other sources of advice and potential funding around, and really that's what HES is there to do. So I would always say to somebody, look, have just missed out. I'm really sorry about that, but the line's got to get drawn somewhere. But there's other sources of help available if people wanted to make their home more energy efficient. And Michael, I'm not going to charge you for that plug, by the way. You can just have that one for free.
There's a question from Janet. Janet, do you want to say this, or do you want me to read it out?
It's all right. I can say it, I think. We're pensioners. We're just on basic state pensions. We have a back boiler, which is, according to the chimney sweep, about to fail. So we obviously need to renew our heating. We've only lived here for 2 years. I'm not sure about the insulation. I know the loft is not good. It's got some insulation, but not good. But if we don't actually qualify, can you still advise us on what heating systems are available, what might be suitable for us, and how much it would cost?
Yeah, Janet, so that advice is definitely there, but at risk of getting a t-shirt that says everyone should talk to Michael and Home Energy Scotland, that Home Energy Scotland would definitely be my recommendation, because they give independent advice. They're not tied into any one scheme or fuel type or supplier or anything like that. And if you've got some ideas in your head about, look, I think I might need to renew my heating system and I'm not sure about the insulation, they can give you the full range of advice about what you might want to do and where you might be able to get some help, because you never know what help's out there, you know. But they will have access to all of that, and they'll be able to give you not just the advice, but they'll signpost you to where the best places to go are.
So I think that's a really good segue into Michael doing his thing, and they're about Energy Scotland. And hopefully that's questions. At least it gives you a friendly, if to go talk to Michael. Michael, do you want to pick up?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. And Ross, thanks for that. I know how hard you've worked trying to get everything up and running during the pandemic. So it's definitely something you can put on your CV coming this far with it up to now. If anyone on the call hasn't met me before, my name's Michael. I work for Home Energy Scotland, and as Ross just touched on, we offer impartial home energy advice and also refer and signpost to various schemes that could be available. The service is funded by the Scottish Government, and we have one of 5 centres throughout Scotland, and the centre I work out of is Inverness, but it covers Orkney and the Highlands and the other islands as well. So we've been working closely with Ross as part of the Warmer Home Scotland scheme for the past 5 years, and I can vouch for the work they've done on that right throughout Scotland and specifically the islands and Orkney. So what I think it was Janet who said before about getting advice if you fall out with some of the schemes that are available. Our service is designed for that in particular, is to find the best fit or the funding that could be available, or just support and advice that could be available out with the area-based scheme or local affordable warm services. There is a really good offer on at the moment. This is the sales pitch. Home Energy Scotland, through the Energy Saving Trust, are offering grants of up to £7,500 for a new air source heat pump. There's also other bits of grant funding available for energy efficiency measures, such as storage heaters, high heat retention storage heaters, and renewable heat, so for solar thermal as well. There's interest-free funding available, again, for folk who fall out with the Warmer Home Scotland scheme or the area-based scheme. It's the funding is up to £10,000 for renewable energy systems, including air source heat pumps, solar thermal, and ground source heat pumps. Part of my role is to actually go out and chat to people in the home and carry out a survey. So what we can do is we can actually look at what you're currently spending on energy costs, look at your heating system, look at the fabric of the building. We can give advice on retrofitting insulation in traditional or older type of properties. And we can provide you with a bespoke report, which will actually look at some of the best options available to you and some of the funding that could be available to get the works done. I think Ross touched on it before with regards fabric first and making sure the property is insulated. But I think what we're finding now, certainly with heat pumps, and I know, the consensus is that, you've got to be insulated and the property's got to be sealed up. What we're finding is what's coming onto the market is high heat heat pumps. And some installers now, as long as they're getting a coefficient of performance or a seasonal performance factor of above 2.5 or above, and what that basically means is for every 1 unit of electricity you're using to run the heat pump, you're getting at least 2.5 units back in renewable heat. Then what we're finding is that some of these high temperature heat pumps can achieve that in properties with limited insulation in. Now, we always say, ideally you want to get the best efficiencies out of a heat pump. So therefore, a traditional low temperature heat pump will be the best option, but you need insulation in. Where you can't retrofit insulation and where someone may have an oil boiler that's getting flow temperatures of 70, 80 degrees, some installers now are offering high temperature heat pumps. Now, there is a risk involved in that because you lose efficiency, but as long as that efficiency doesn't fall below 2.5, then it can actually work in a property with limited insulation. So that's basically some of the advice that we can give. We work closely with all the different stakeholders across Orkney, like Thor and Michelle at Warmworks and Luke and Stephen at the council. But yeah, if anyone wants specific advice from me, then by all means get in touch with our service, Home Energy Scotland. As Ross has pointed out, we are impartial. We're not installing anything, so we're there to give advice which is suited to the householder. And yeah, if you need some advice and some support, just get in touch. I think that's probably everything, Neil. If there's anything else, any questions?
No, that's great, Michael. If you could just put your contact number in the chat, if you get a moment, that would be really useful. Just on the bottom of the screen. That then we can make sure we got that. Any questions for Michael? Because I missed seeing Joe's hand go up earlier. I'm going to bring her in. So any questions for Michael? Okay, if not for a second. Joe, did you want to come in on the point you were going to make earlier?
Yeah, I was just interested in what Ross was saying about working with the community and the apprenticeships interests there. And we're at Heriot-Watt University based in Stromness, ICIT, and we do offer quite a few graduate apprenticeship opportunities. And we're very keen to develop this further across Orkney. And I just wondered if that was of interest to Warmworks.
Yeah, definitely. So just as you were coming on there, Joe, I put a response in the chat to your question. I would really welcome a chat. We do a lot with various further education and higher education bodies across Scotland in terms of apprenticeships, but also in terms of graduate placements. And in terms of work placements for young people that have been out of work. So I will pop my email address on a message to you in the chat. If you drop me an email, I can link you up with our communities manager who manages all those relationships, because I think it's worth picking something up there.
Thanks very much, Ross. That's brilliant.
No worries. I'll put my email address in the chat.
There you go. That's exactly what OREF does. Join people together who wouldn't normally come across each other. Brilliant. Excellent. Okay. So I just want to bring in a few other people who've got some other bits and pieces to chip in. Robert, do you want to come in on anything from a Thor point of view at the moment?
Yeah, I was, yeah, it was good to hear that Ross is keen to get referrals in for anywhere he can get them. And I was just having a look back at our latest starts there. Luckily, at a moment there, and Warmworks has been the agency that we've made the second highest number of referrals to in the past 2 quarters of this past financial year, just behind Home Energy Scotland. So they're both getting custom for Thor, you know, as we get clients in that would benefit for their services, whether that's heat abs or the Warmer Home Scotland, you know. So but as far as our most recent winter now that we're in, and with the pandemic, I think the most worrying statistic that we're seeing is, you know, that there's been a huge increase across the board compared to the first 3 quarters in 2019-20, the first 3 quarters of this financial year 2020-21. We had 370 unique beneficiaries in that period compared to 213 the previous year. And the intervention numbers have gone up to 563 from 369, and most of these, like when we're talking about interventions, it would be electricity vouchers and cosy home packs, the kind of tangible things that we can have, as well as the advice and the signposting and the welfare support that Lorraine gives, you know, in the way of income maximisation and benefit checks, and we do tariff switching advice too, of course. So that's ramped up, but the one standout figure is that for the whole of 2019-2020 we had administered just over £6,000 worth of electricity vouchers to clients, but in the first 3 quarters of 2020-21 alone, that figure's gone up to £20,460. So that was 533 vouchers in that 9-month period so far, and we've still got January to March to go. So I know that the food bank, they were our biggest referee because we're administering their vouchers during the COVID pandemic because they're shut. You know, so we had 75 referrals for them alone, you know, in the last quarter. So it's kind of sticking plaster solutions at the moment, you know, while, you know, we can refer to the likes of Warmworks and Home Energy Scotland for folk to get the improvements done to their homes. There's a lot of electricity being used up, and you know, folk are obviously struggling during the current economic climate, and I guess that the actual climate outside isn't helping this last wee while because we've had this unusual long period of freezing, you know. So that's kind of a picture of what we're doing. But like Ross and Michael, you know, working together with other agencies is getting more and more important. And besides them and the Food Bank, CAB and NHS Orkney, OIC and the Housing Association and Care and Repair are the other agencies that we're referring to and getting referrals from, really. So busy times.
Thanks, Robert. It's good to know these various nets are there, but it's sad to know that they're needed so much. So yeah, clearly it doesn't look like the insulation guys are going to be working themselves out of business anytime soon. So, let's hope we do get to that stage. Okay, thanks, Robert. Any questions for Robert? Okay. So yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
Just to add to it, I mean, just to completely support what Robert said, but also to add to it, I think there's this kind of perception that the pandemic will be done and normality will kick in. But the long-term effects of the pandemic, we haven't even discussed in terms of people losing jobs, people losing livelihoods, and the kind of knock-on consequences of how we're going to cope with all these people in the jobs market and people struggling to heat their homes. I think from a fuel poverty point of view, what Robert's talking about is some scary statistics, but I think it's the tip. I mean, I don't want to depress everybody, but it is the tip of the iceberg. You know, I don't think from a fuel poverty point of view, things are going to get better. The long-term economic consequences of the pandemic aren't really known yet. So I think we're just kind of really scratching the surface of the help that'll be needed.
I'm sure you're right, depressingly, but it also, the thing we're seeing from our renewables side of things is that the decarbonisation has moved so centre into the agenda. People are seeing this as a way out from the pandemic downturn. So in terms of the effort that people are willing to put into this, I'm seeing this is just systematically continuing to increase. So you know, Orkney's often had a severe labour shortage. Well, unfortunately, that might be something that's about to change. So getting at this and getting things insulated and getting us to a you know, frankly, a cosy and habitable state sooner, works for everybody. So I think so a plea that I've got really is that if anybody sees obstructions to this, we need to drag them out into the daylight and deal with them, because we need to get on with this, because it's better for the economy long term, and it's better for people's social welfare in the short term. That turned a bit of a sermon, so I'll stop that. I just wondered, Mark, Hull, did you want to come in on what's been going on, and or Evelyn? I'm not, Evelyn. I wasn't sure whether you were going to be on the call, so I don't know if you two want to fight this out or.
Oh, she would always win, Neil. She would always win. Yeah, no, it's cool. I think, yeah, any sort of scene setting you were asking. I mean, Community Energy Scotland, just to confuse those that don't know, is another Energy Scotland organisation, but we're an independent charity. We, unlike Ross and Michael and Robert, we're not acting directly in this area, but we've always worked to either with Scottish Government money or as independent resources, we've gone out to try and get resources for that kind of anchor organisations within communities and the practitioners like Thor. Well, Michelle, I'll embarrass Michelle, who, I mean, back in the dark ages, we started out, she was, when she was at Resi Development Trust, we got funding to do like the home insulation Scotland and the UHIS funding when she was a power down officer, literally back in the dark ages. So that sort of thing where we can use collective community action basically to actually tackle these issues. Ross, from that point of view, we work with organisations really. Over the last while, we've ended because of challenges and successes to some degree in community energy. You know, we've gone into projects of a more innovative nature. But by doing that, we've always tried to then be the ones to try and make sure that they're just and inclusive from that point of view and provide a bridge, often either to private enterprise or others, to try and make sure that our actions and interventions are just and inclusive, whether that's transition to net zero or just trying to make energy systems and modern energy systems work. Most recently, we've done quite a bit, as Michael was speaking about, on heat pumps and the appropriateness of fitting them. We're doing some European projects, but also some local stuff, just looking at how we can do them and tackle them make them smart and make them affordable really in the setting. So that's really it for, I think, Neil. I think it's probably a segue to people like Gareth and others on the reflex type innovation projects, but that's really our role for those that don't know.
Thanks, Mark. So Evelyn turned up slightly before Gareth, so I was going to give Evelyn the next bite. Is there anything you want to bring in on? Or do you want Gareth to do an intro on reflex and fitting on the car piece? How do you want to play it, Evelyn?
Yeah, I'll probably just go now because it sort of builds on a lot of good work that I know others here have also done. So some of you might be aware that there's there are two car clubs in Orkney at the moment. The first is the Rousey, Egglesey and Wyre car club, which is great. And I suppose more recently started, there's been a co-wheels car club that OHAL did a lot of work to bring to Orkney, and Reflex has sort of been working on that and sort of expanding the sites that are available. So there is now a car available at the Kirkwall Pier for people to hire, as well as the one in Somerville Square in Kirkwall. And also there is a car in Doonby and also in Ham. So that's sort of an electric car club that in theory should be cheaper than owning your own vehicle. And I know during COVID, there's a sort of a concern about sharing vehicles, but they are cleaned very frequently. And for those without a car that can drive, it may be a better alternative to public transport, possibly depending on your situation. I think that's all that I'd really want to bring in on the car club side for Reflex. I mean, it's not tackling specifically these sort of heating issues, but it is an option that is there for people.
Okay, and if I can just piggyback on that piece, Evelyn, about what's happening with the car club as part of Reflex. So you mentioned there's the car going in Kirkwall. There's also there are 3 cars which we're setting up in Stromness at the moment, and I'm just going to quickly share with you a screen which hopefully is a photograph. Somebody tell me they're seeing a photograph of the old Academy and the Chargers. Somebody give me a nod. Evelyn, you seeing it or not? Yeah. Okay. So
there's actually 5 chargers now installed.
Yes. So
there.
Yeah, there are 2 in the back down here as well. So the point is that what we're doing here, we're trying something different through the Reflex project, which is in the past, EVs, electric vehicles that have been used in car clubs, have had to have their own dedicated car parking space. What we're trying to do is get away from that and have a number of spaces that the car can be put into. So this is a different way of doing it, and we've tried this by putting in a series of cheaper chargers rather than the conventional ones that you'll see the council have been putting in to date. And the idea is by basically flooding the car park with chargers, you can take the car back and put it in any of these points rather than have to just put it into a dedicated space. So the idea is we're not trying to tie up specific car parking spaces in the car park with EVs. The council chargers cost about £17,000 each, where there are 2 ports on those. These are costing about £2,000 each, as opposed to, so that, you know, they're a quarter, well, quarter of the cost. So this is something that's going in at the moment. This photograph was taken only the other day. White lines haven't gone back in yet, but they will be shortly. And we should then be able to publicise the fact that there'll be 3 cars in Stromness available. Now, the plan was that one of those cars was going to be used for the general public at all times, and 2 of the cars were going to be used as pool cars during working hours here at the Old Academy, and when people were working there. You remember those days when people used to work in offices. So we're now looking as though, because there aren't people going to be in the offices for the foreseeable future, we're probably going to make all 3 cars available for public hire at all times. So that's a bit of a change that we're likely to make. This has been funded through the Reflex project, which is one small aspect. So I'll stop sharing the photograph of a dull charger and a load of white lines, if I can find where the stop sharing button is. It's on the wrong screen. There we go. So Gareth, do you want to come in more about the rest of Reflex stuff?
Yeah, and firstly, just on a personal note, it's really fascinating and encouraging to hear all of that stuff that's just gone before. You know, those of us that have lived in Orkney for a long time and are aware of the fuel poverty side of things, it's great to see so many initiatives happening. So everything that I talk about isn't, instead of that, it's something that's a little bit different, and it fills a gap, if you like, that is beyond that. And I think it was Janet who kind of said, you know, and Ross addressed the point, what happens if you don't fit into one of these models? And I guess in its simplest terms, the idea of Reflex was that if we're going to achieve the decarbonisation that we all know needs to happen, it's not going to be possible for all of us just to go out and buy a new EV or go and buy a new heating system and go and have these installed. What we need is something that helps us as householders achieve that. And so in its simplest form, what Reflex is trying to explore is whether we could create effectively an energy bank. And so it's an organization that you can come to and say, look, I'd like to go down that decarbonisation route. I'm happy to pay for it as I use it, but can you help me get that capital of getting the technology in place in the first place? And so to create something like that is a very radical, new structure. It's like a utility, like SSE, like Scottish Power, but it's different because it's a utility that actually is taking the responsibility of having funding behind the technology that you might want to use as a householder. And it's also trying to decarbonize at the same time, whereas in the past, utilities have been focused on just selling us more and more energy, which has been unclean energy as well. So baby steps to get started. We launched the public offer early in December. So we're, is it 6 or 7 weeks, 8 weeks into it now? It's been fantastic and challenging at the same time. Those of us that have been involved in Reflex and in the wider community, I think, have just been so chuffed that we've managed to get something actually started. But to start a new organisation, and maybe as Ross alluded to in terms of getting things started at these times, is challenging. And we've got a fantastic team who aren't in a shop because we can't get the shop organised at the moment within the COVID routine, but they're in a base at Hatston and in Stromness, and they're becoming the virtual shop like everybody else. Reflex has gone virtual, so we've got a team there that are handling the various applications that are coming in from the public. The mechanism we've taken is to encourage people to become members of Reflex, because we want it to act as though it's a community enterprise. It's a company that that is there to help us as a community across the community, and therefore people should feel part of it, and that membership route is a way to do that. And by taking on membership, which is free to any resident in Orkney, you'll be kept informed of the offers and the initiatives that are underway and growing as Reflex grows. And we hope and intend to have a seamless interface with the organisations that have been here speaking about the different parts of it. Reflex isn't a cuckoo in the nest to come and push other people away. It's designed to sit beside all of these other organisations and fill some of the gaps and fulfil the need that we need to decarbonise the whole of the community. So yeah, just at the beginning, early steps, and you know, really hoping that people get on board, come and explore what options are available. Heating per se at the moment isn't something that we've launched with in terms of heating solutions within Reflex. In part, that was an awareness that there were some other options which you've heard about from the others today, but obviously there's a lot of households that won't qualify for those schemes, but we just had to prioritize where we started activities, and heating will come, but we just couldn't launch everything at the same time. So we've got some interesting electricity tariffs, and we're just taking the first steps in getting access to EVs on a leasing model with a partner, Drive Electric. Yeah, so that's where we are. We're 8 weeks into it. We've been really thrilled at the support we've had so far. I think we've got about 350 people that have signed up as members. So that's absolutely brilliant, and looking forward to that flourishing alongside the other activities that you've heard about tonight.
Thanks, Gareth. Any questions on any of that lot so far? Because there's a huge amount of stuff that is going on around the piece, and we're just trying to keep people as abreast of things as is possible at the moment. I know there's more information. Joe, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I'd like to just follow up with Gareth about the heating information coming from Reflex, and particularly in relation to advice for householders in older buildings or historical buildings. Do you think Reflex will be able to offer advice to people in that situation that want to convert from oil-fired heating into electrical heating, but just don't know where to go or what would work in an old property and historical properties?
Yeah, it's absolutely a planned aspiration for us to reach that point, Joe. As we sit here today, we're not quite ready for that. One of the reasons that myself and others were really keen to get this meeting to happen was to actually allow us to start to reach out to Warmworks and some of the other things that are happening as well. So the fact that this meeting's happened is in a sense a piece of that OREF gel that brings things together and makes things happen. So there's actually a purpose behind this for me and others as well. So we're on that pathway. We want to integrate with what's happening in everything that you've heard about tonight. So if we can find ways of working with Energy Scotland, with Warmworks and Thor, and integrating those into a package, a seamless package. If somebody's got the right advice framework, we don't have to replicate that. We can work with that and bolt on the bits that Reflex can add to it. So this is part of an exploration for us as well. And as soon as we can articulate what that package is, and we've got the resources to do it, whether it's in partnership with somebody else, whether it's adding to something else, we'll let people know. And the membership scheme is the mechanism for that, because once we have your email and we can keep you informed of what's happening. So that's something we're actively working on. But at the moment, as we stand today, we haven't got an offering at the moment for that.
Joe, it sounds like you need a word with Michael as a starting point, because I'm sure they've got really useful information and could probably help there. And I do know that there is a plan. I know Meg from CES is putting together a gathering of various people in this sort of space to work out how we can ensure that the jigsaw works. Because at the moment we've all got bits of a jigsaw, they're not all on the table, and what we're trying to do is describe a jigsaw rather than actually see if the bits fit together. And so there's an opportunity to try and do a piece of that. So I know that's work that's in progress, and from the continuous meetings I know that go on in the reflex space, as Gareth said, there's an absolute appetite to do that Heineken thing. Was it Heineken or Carlsberg, was the one that reaches the parts other bits can't get to? I can never remember. Anyway, that thing. So it's collaborative rather than competitive. Absolutely on that.
It wasn't
Okay.
Caliber anyhow. That's
No, that's just piss. Allegedly, other brands are all. Oh, now we've recorded this. I'm stuck with this. I'm okay, moving swiftly on. There you go. Right. Evelyn, go ahead.
Yeah, I've actually got 2 questions for Ross. First one's, I suppose, do you have sort of like a typical timeline between when somebody might apply and actually have work completed in the property?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a good question, Evelyn. I guess for me, I'm going to give a bit of a politician's answer. It depends on what needs to be done. So if someone comes into the office tomorrow and has a chat with Michelle and says, here are all of my kind of eligibility evidences and when can I get a survey, and I just need some loft insulation doing, because I've been in the loft and there's not much loft insulation in there and I feel like that would keep my bills down. Well, the reality is that's going to be relatively straightforward. It'll be a matter of weeks. If someone comes in and says, I want to get some external wall insulation done, and that's got to go through a planning process, and then that's got to go, at the current time of year, external wall insulation takes longer because there's not as much daylight hours and it's cold, and so that's going to run into months. So I guess my answer is it depends on what needs to be done. We would hope that somebody's not waiting months and months and months on end, but it depends on what needs to be done to get a timeline on it.
Yeah, makes sense. That actually kind of leads me into my second question, which is the heat pump products that you were mentioning. You said they're very low on noise, and I was just wondering if they were so low on noise that actually it reduces the need for planning applications when you are putting them into properties.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and you're spot on. So they fall below the threshold for permitted development. So none of the products that we install require the involvement of local authority planning. They're effectively fit and forget because they're so I think the classification is ultra low noise or something, and there is a benchmark in the industry that they have to meet to be ultra low noise. So yeah, there's no planning implications for any of the heat pump products that we tend to work with.
That's great. And then, sorry, a third question. Could you name what the heat pump products were again? Because they sound quite interesting.
So the Mitsubishi EcoDan is so Michael earlier on talked about what's effectively emerging now with heat pumps is you have a low temperature heat pump, which will put a flow rate of about 50-55 degrees through the radiators. And our low temperature heat pump tends to be the Mitsubishi EcoDan, but there are also developed coming onto the market now high temperature air source heat pumps, which will push a flow rate temperature about up to 75 degrees, which is about equivalent with a gas boiler through the radiators. And for us, I believe it's the Valent Aerotherm. That's the high temperature unit that we use.
Oh, thank you.
But I mean, just Michael raised something earlier that just to come back on that and not disagree with Michael, but just offer a slightly alternative view. The idea is that because a high temperature air source heat pump pushes a higher temperature around the radiators, that automatically makes it a better option than a low temperature heat pump. Doesn't quite work like that. A low temperature heat pump is still a better option in a very well insulated building because it just costs less to run and will perform more efficiently. Michael's right, there are some buildings where a high temperature heat pump might be a better fit, but I would just, sometimes with new technology, think, 75 degree flow rate, same as a gas boiler, that'll be a silver bullet and we'll all be fitting high temperature units. Not quite, and it's still a horses for courses thing.
I definitely echo that, Ross.
Yep. Yeah, so all good points. I suppose one of the challenges is if you've got property which you simply cannot insulate, then the answer always used to be, I've got to stay on oil. And I suppose there may be those places where, we know we're not going to stay on oil indefinitely, but obviously fabric first is got to be the way to go, I would say. Michael, do you want to come back on that, or Ross?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Ross. You know, we do want to fit MCS accreditation, which is the quality standard which installers are governed by. You know, it specifically says in the MCS accreditation that if an installer is fitting a high temperature heat pump, they need to specify why they're not installing a low temperature heat pump. But I cover not just Orkney, but the Highlands as well. And I've come across some installers, and I'd like to say, you know, it's not an Orkney installer who are just putting high temperature heat pumps in because it's like a panacea for switching from oil to heat pumps. Now, if you follow MCS accreditation by the letter of the law, then you've got to say why you're putting in a high temperature one. I think the other point is what Neil's just touched on is, you know, we've got lots of properties in Orkney and right across the Highlands and Islands that are really difficult to treat. You know, all the quick wins have been done, so to speak. And we're now left with a lot of traditional buildings pre-1920 where it is difficult to retrofit. Having said that, there is more products coming on the market all the time. Now, I know through Warmer Home Scotland, you're doing underfloor insulation using the Q-Bot and spray foam. I've come across recently an installer in Orkney who's using isonine spray foam on a traditional property. Now, I'm always dubious about using modern methods in traditional properties just because of the risk of trapping moisture. But I'm led to believe it's BBA approved and it's open cell, so it allows the building to breathe and you can spray it behind a lath and plaster wall. I haven't seen any done yet, and I'm sure we'll find out soon enough whether or not it's actually causing damp in houses. But it is a product that's coming onto the market, or it is on the market. Yeah, so it's finding what fits best, and no two properties. I know it's a cliche, but no two properties are the same, and we have to look at the toolkit of measures we've got and see what works best. What I find is Historic Scotland have done some really good research with some insulation materials that are not traditionally used in the government schemes. You know, I know past 2030, it's all about using, you know, a specific type of material. Some of the things which I've seen used out on Pappy is like sheep's wool or wood fiberboard. Now, it's not, at the moment, it's not materials you can get the interest-free loan for, or you can get with the government schemes, but there's no reason why I think as, you know, as a forum, we can't look into that further and see, you know, if there's any mileage in using some of this material. So it's not straightforward, and there is a lot of questions that still need to be asked, and, you know, more work done. On a final point, I mentioned before about the funding available through Home Energy Scotland for heat pumps. As part of that funding, what they're also doing is putting monitoring into properties to try and find out the actual in-use performance of heat pumps. Now, I know you mentioned, Neil, in a previous meeting, we need to get some real data on how heat pumps are operating in use, and hopefully, you know, that's been heeded, and there is some work that's going to get going soon on actually measuring the performance in-house.
That'd be interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Neil, can I just add to that? Sorry, I'll just say that's really, really welcome, Michael. But also to be aware, Smile, we're doing the HT heat pumps and comparing them under that European project. I've got to say this, we've got Peter and Sarah on the call, and they'll kill me if not. And we're doing really good monitoring of those over the next couple of years. So just to have that in there as well. But welcome extra stuff, Michael. Yeah.
Be ready to see that report when you get stuff back on that, Mark. So Robert's waving at me. Susan's got her hand up, and Ross is off mute. So I don't know how I'm going to take this. So I'm going to, Robert, I think you wanted to come in as a supplement to that, did you? And then I'll take Susan.
Yeah, sorry, it was just specifically on that isonine spray foam insulation, because I think it must have been about 6 or 7 years ago or more that the Housing Association was offered a DeLonghi heat pump just as a trial, and one of the conditions of that was to have what was a timber kit house treated with that isonine insulation, and we did that and did air tightness tests on it. And I've not heard, not that I've been at that house for a while, but I don't think we've had any dampness issues with that. There might have been separate issues with the heat pump itself, to be honest, but so that was a good few years ago that we had that done. So I might be able to do a bit of checking on that.
I think that would be a really good idea, Robert. If you could come back on that, that would be some really useful intel, wouldn't it? I think.
And I'll be doubly cheeky then, Neil, as well, since Robert is, and also Robert, yourself and your Richard as well. You got a lot of funding early on under CARES to compare different heat pumps, the NEBI and all the rest. And OHEL really led the way for a while at looking at different interventions. Some of it's out of date, Neil, but it was some really good data over the last decade that would potentially just even looking at bills and things over the last.
Okay.
So OHEL was some of the first ones to put in right across the board. I mean, even where we're deliberately trying different brands and different comparable properties with each other.
Okay. Well, it sounds like there's a rich vein we can peck at there a bit further. Susan, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I'm just saying we've got really loving our high temperature heat pump. It seems to be we've not had it a year yet, but seems to be working well. My question really, or it's not really a question, but just I wonder if any of the folks speaking have any thoughts about this tension now that we're in with COVID and ventilating our rooms. So we're having our doors wide open to let the air through, and insulation. Just if there's any comment on that. You know, we operate the post office with the door wide open just because of people coming in and out, and just wondered if anybody got any comment. Is there a tension there, and how do we go forward with that? Just any thoughts, really.
Michael came off. Oh, Gareth came off mute first, and then Michael. Go on then.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we've actually been thinking about, and Neil knows as well, in our work context, because we're in an old academy which has no ventilation of rooms, and I mean, thankfully, as we all know, we've got a very low not incubation rate, what's it called? Infection rate, at the moment. So, but one of the challenges of getting people back into the office context, as well as mixing in homes, is going to be ventilation. So, but the challenge then is, and this is just simple off the top of my head, like if you just start exchanging air, it gets very cold. It's like having a chimney or your door open. So we're going to need some kind of heat pump or heat exchange technology, which maybe you can put in a window pane or something like that exchanges the air but retains the heat, presumably. I don't know whether anybody's got that, but it's maybe something to think about.
Michael, and then Mark.
It's just a general comment about indoor air quality. I think we've it's certainly been an issue that's been discussed at length for the last few years now. The more and more we're sealing properties up, the more we run the risk of, affecting indoor air quality. There's been recent reports around particulate matter with, burning fossil fuels, solid fuel stoves. Any new house that's built up to current standards, building regulation standards, it would probably fail an air quality pressure test, air quality test, and it would need mechanical ventilation. Now, not every new property is tested. When they do a test, a SAP assessment on a new build property, generally, if it's not near the benchmark, then they'll just say, yeah, go ahead and build, and you don't need mechanical ventilation. But if you were to test most new properties, they would probably fail the standard. Now, that's just speaking to professionals in that field. So really, there's an argument for us to be putting mechanical heat recovery ventilation in every new property we build, but that's unfortunately not happening. So I think there is a discussion to be had around indoor air quality, and I think it is being had, the discussion, but how we get there is another question.
Thank you. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just wondered what your thoughts were.
Yeah. Mark, do you want to come in on that? And I'm conscious of getting up on
yeah,
time.
I don't want to be too much of my own voice, but yeah, a little following up on. No, I'm saying that. No, I'm definitely following on from Michael from that point of view. I mean, it's about 10, 15 years ago, as we insulated it, we started to see dampness in the outside corners because we were just too tight and there was condensation happening in the far corners of properties, and that itself became an issue, and the air quality. But we have learned, we've got a lot to learn from Scandinavia. I mean, this property has a mechanical ventilation heat recovery as standard. We should be doing it as standard. Ian Garman, who used to work for us, he's doing a PhD now in Sweden, literally on this air quality and dealing with that inside properties. Because there is no magic bullet. You can't make yourself hermetically sealed in a box. You have to have an air exchange, but that doesn't need to mean heat exchange.
Yeah, that's a good point. Air exchange does not have to mean heat exchange. Okay. Right. Well, look, thanks, Rush, indeed, for all that. I wasn't sure whether that we were going to need to go into any other areas before we finished, because I've got one small appeal that I wanted to make while I've got a chance, and that's once again going back to data again, and it's really about people if you've got EVs. So if you do have an EV, and we're really keen to get your mileage data off you, I'll tell you why, because here's an example of a piece of information that we've just been able to extract from the data of the people who do send us EVs. Is somebody seeing the graph there? Which is really showing the difference in the average mileages done of the cars on the database. There's about 80 on the database. We get about 60 results in every month, and this is showing the difference in mileages in the last year, which is basically obviously during the COVID lockdown. So the lockdown in May and June, really mileage has dropped off a cliff, but interestingly we've seen them climb back up, and they're pretty close to some of the pre-existing levels. So the point is, this is really useful data to see what is going on, because through this we know the mileages of people traveling, we therefore know the energy they're consuming, therefore the CO2 savings that we're generating, and all the rest of it. But it only works if we get data, and I suspect what we've had here is a slight thinning out of data going on, and the people who are not traveling at all are going, you know what, sod it, there's no point in sending the mileage in, which is therefore putting the average mileages up. So my point is, if you are on the database, please do fill out, give us your monthly mileages. If you're not on the database, the email address is ev@oref.co.uk, and we'd be delighted to see you. So that was my little appeal at the end of that. So I am therefore going to draw the evening to a close. We're 4 minutes over time, but we did start a few minutes late. I really just want to say thank you so much to Ross for contributing for today. It was very interesting to see, and I also appreciate the context setting by Luke and the other work that's gone on that shows the landscape and the ecosystem that really operates here in Orkney, and we'd be delighted to support the works of Warmworks and everybody else to try and drive this on. We shouldn't forget that OREF's aims are for energy efficiency and the preferential use of renewables, and it's in that order. So energy efficiency has always been fundamental to what OREF has done for the 20 years, and Martin is on the call as one of the founder members, and Gareth was very soon in after that. It's always been a solid and central plank of what OREF does. The technology's improved hugely over that time, the opportunities have improved, and the necessity has increased radically. So we know we need to do more, and we've got to get at everything and get at it now, because if we are going to have our decarbonisation target of 2030, then we need to get at this and nail this at probably 5% CO2 reduction a year, maybe 10% a year. This is going to be a serious play. So I'll go back to the point I made earlier, which is, if anybody sees obstructions to getting the better deployment of heat conserving technologies, they're finding problems, then I think it's incumbent on all of us to talk about it, drag these problems out into the street and give them a good kicking, so we sort this out and find a way to get past it. We cannot endure the current condition much longer. So I'd like to thank everybody for their contributions tonight. I've learned a hell of a lot, really, really enjoyable. Ross, did you want to come in on a last word? So you come off mute.
Yeah, I mean, no, just to say thanks so much for having me, I guess, first of all, and first and foremost. So I look forward to continuing to work with the forum, and obviously lots of people on the call already know Michelle and know where we're based. So thanks very much for having me, and look forward to building on some of the building blocks we've hopefully put in place tonight.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Ross. Thanks for throwing yourself into the lion's den. We really appreciate it. The next OREF meeting is at the start of March. I can't remember if it's the 2nd or 3rd or whatever it is. And the intention then, or it will be, the report back on the Sustainable Orkney Conference. We'll be pulling together the report on that, and we're going to come back with some feedback on that. So my thanks to everybody for sticking with us all tonight. I think when I last counted, there were 26 participants, or 25 at the start. There were 26 participants a few minutes ago, and there are still 26 participants, which is pretty amazing. So well done, everybody. Thanks a lot. Stay safe out there, and see you next month. All right.